In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So one of my least favorite parenting responsibilities are when you have to go through the clothes of the kids after a certain season, because after you start to dress your kids, you realize like the pants have now become capris, and now it's time to actually get them something else that actually fits them. And if you don't have kids, like, you may not resonate with this, but if you're a parent, like, for me, going through their closets is one of the most painful experiences possible. They don't like it, I don't like it, but it's something that must be done. And every time we have to do this, I am so resistant to doing this, and I will put it off as long as possible. Because what happens is that you get into the room and then you pull out all the clothes and then you just start to put it on them. This fits, this doesn't fit. This works, this old. This has a hole, throw it away. They want to run out, I want to run out, but it's got to be done. And I am so resistant to this process. And I'm so like, I know it's coming because summer's around the corner, and now we're in that change of season. So I know it's coming, so I'm kind of preparing myself for it. But what I realize is that as I'm going into this process, like, I have a lot of hidden expectations about what it is to actually raise kids and dress them, right? That I think that it's just going to happen. But in reality, what I don't realize is that, okay, there's a lot of work that goes into making sure your kids have the appropriate clothes when they go out, right? Not only is there the shopping, but there's the maintenance of the clothes and the throwing away of this that has holes and getting different clothes. And then when the seasons come, like, preparing yourself and realizing, okay, this is what you need. Like, as a parent, like, nobody ever preps you for this. This is something that you go in, you realize, like, oh, it's just got to be done, right? But it's part of parenting. But there was a hidden expectation in myself of, well, it will just happen, right? It will just happen that they will have clothes, and it will be the right clothes, right? And they will just wear it. But I forget that I have just a lot of hidden expectations that certain things will be easy or certain things will pan out in a certain ways. And we live with a lot of hidden expectations in our lives, that we want things to play out in a certain way, and we kind of tell ourselves this script in our mind. But when life doesn't play out in a certain way, we get frustrated. And a lot of times we don't know why we're frustrated, we just know that we're frustrated. But usually what is fueling that frustration is we have hidden expectations. We have expectations of how something will play out, right? That we haven't spoken, that we haven't agreed upon, that just kind of sit in our minds. And when it doesn't play out the way that we had thought it would play out, we get frustrated, we get angry. And when it happens over and over, we get resentful. We get resentful. And it's there that I want us to look at the story of the prodigal son, but I want to focus on the older brother today. Frequently we go to the younger son and we talk about him, but I want to talk about the older brother today. Not only, one of the main reasons is because in our book study, we're about to get into the older brother. So I'm kind of priming our minds for our continuation of the book study. But when we look at the older brother, okay, the older son, he had expectations, right? He had expectations. And when his expectations were not met, he found himself in a very frustrating situation. And the glimpse of the younger brother that we have in the story is that after the younger son had taken the inheritance, gone out, squandered it, and come back, and the father met him, and the father begins to throw a big banquet to celebrate that the younger son has come back, the older brother is out in the fields when all this happens. We don't know what he's doing, but he's out doing likely something that is very, very responsible. Okay, because that is the role of the older brother. He is the responsible, hardworking, dedicated older brother who stayed at home and took care of things when nobody else would. When that younger brother went off, he was the one who stayed at home. He was the righteous one. He was the good one. Okay? And when he was coming back to the home and he heard all the party, okay, he heard the celebration, he really wrestled with what was happening. Because in his mind, okay, and in his heart, he wanted to be part of the party. But for some reason, while he was doing all the hard work, the party began without him. And he had a hard time with that. He had a hard time with that. And we know he had a hard time with that because when he came back and heard, and he called out the servant who told him, and then he refused to go in, eventually his father comes out to meet him. And this is what the younger son says. He said, "So he answered and said to his father, 'Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commandments at any time. And yet you never gave me a young goat that I might make merry with my friends.'" He has a hard time celebrating that his brother is here because he is resentful. He's resentful of what his younger brother did. He is resentful that he was the one who stayed and worked. He was the good one. He did not go out and squander the inheritance. He was responsible for the farm. He did all that. But yet he did it with a hidden expectation. And finally, the hidden expectation comes to light. What was the hidden expectation? I did this, so I should be able to do this. I did this, so you should know that this is what I want. Right? And that hidden expectation finally comes out. Hidden expectation finally comes out. What I think is really sad about this is that frequently we can relate to many people in the story, but many of us can relate to the older brother, right? The older son, because he was the right one, right? You can look at yourselves, okay, we look at ourselves and say, okay, we're the Christians in society. We're the ones who are trying to do right. We're the ones going to church. Most of the people are sleeping at home, but we're here at church. We're here doing different things. We're here serving. We're out like helping people, right? It's very easy for us to identify as the older son because we're doing right. But what's sad in this situation is that the older son did right, but he was so angry. What a bummer that he's angry, that he's upset. But yet he was doing good, but he's filled with resentment. Well, it doesn't seem very appealing to do good if what's happening is that we're filled with resentment and anger. When we look at other people who are off living a good time or having a good time, right? Well, we're the ones slaving. This doesn't sit well with us. It's not so encouraging when we're doing good, but yet we're dealing with all this anger. And a lot of that has to do with hidden expectations that we have. Right? It's a bit scary to do what's right and be left with resentment. Because resentment and joy don't coexist. Okay? Resentment and joy struggle to coexist together. Resentment tends to steal our joy. And there was a joyful situation happening, but the older brother couldn't experience it. Why? Because resentment. But it's a bummer that he also was living life in a way where he was living what we would call a virtuous life. He was dedicated. He was committed. He was serving hard. He was pursuing after the virtues. He was doing that, but yet resentment has this sneaky way of affixing itself to the backside of virtues. Right? Has a sneaky way that we can be pursuing after virtues, but how we do the virtues and why we do the virtues, why we pursue after the virtues, if we're not careful, has a way of allowing resentment to kind of piggyback into the picture. Like, you know when you go to the aquarium and you see the big fish, right? What do you often see with the big fish? There's always that little one that's swimming on the fin, right? It's catching a ride. Resentment, or virtues, right, consume a lot of our time and energy. They're not easy, right? We have to work on them. Resentment can be that little fish kind of hanging along. Because when we do the virtues, when we pursue after the virtues, oftentimes we're pursuing after them because we're like, okay, if I do this, then you're going to do this, Lord. You're going to set me up for this. And when we don't see that happen, we get frustrated and we get resentful towards God or towards others. And that tends to steal away our joy that comes in the resentment. Right? Our joy that comes through the virtue. Right? We say, I was doing good, but I'm not married. Right? I was faithful, but look, my son or daughter is sick with a chronic illness. Right? I was a good servant, but why do I lose like those that are close to me? Right? So we can do and practice the virtues, right? We can pursue after good things, but a lot of times, if we're not careful, we pursue after them with a hidden expectation that if I do this, then the blessing is going to come. But when we look at the Father's response to this, it's very, very different, right? The Son was saying, I served and you didn't. Okay? I served and you didn't. But the Father comes out to meet his Son. And what does he say? And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. The Father and the Son are operating from two totally different paradigms. Okay? Two totally different paradigms. The paradigm of the Son is, I pursue after you, and I expect this. The Father comes and said, we were together. We were in the same household. We were in the same field. We shared meals together. I know you and you know me. Right? We built the relationship. How did the relationship come? Yes, it was through the service. It was through running the ship together, so to speak. But the Father wasn't emphasizing the virtue. The Father was emphasizing that, look, you and I are in a relationship. You were with me. That's what He wants. But the older son could only see that I did and I didn't get. The Father saw the pursuit of the virtues as a pathway to the relationship. But the relationship was the end goal. The Son, older son, saw the pursuit of the virtue as a means to get something else. Right? They're operating on two different paradigms. Father saw that when the Son pursues after the virtues, the goal, right, the prize, the blessing was in the relationship that they had. We actually look, this idea is captured in one of the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Right? And while there's a lot to unpack in this Beatitude, it captures this idea. Because in this Beatitude, we're saying, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, right? That pursuit of righteousness is the pursuit of the virtues that the Lord has. He is the fullness of virtues, and when we pursue after them, when we pursue after patience, when we pursue after a life of service, when we pursue after generosity, when we pursue after all these different virtues, right? We're doing what the Lord did. He's the fullness of the virtues, right? But they shall be satisfied. Satisfied how? Not from the virtue, but from the relationship that comes out of pursuing the virtue. Right? That they are ultimately, the virtue becomes a stepping stone to the relationship. And it's in that satisfaction that comes out of the relationship that one finds this blessed life. Right? This is what the older son was missing. I want to read a quote from St. Gregor of Nyssa, where he says, the possession of virtue, on the other hand, where it is once firmly established, is neither circumscribed by time nor limited by satiety. Meaning, like, we can never get full of pursuing after the virtue. On the contrary, it always offers its disciples the ever-fresh experience of the fullness of its own delights. Therefore, God the Word promises to those who hunger for these that they shall be filled, and in being filled, their desire will not be dulled, but rather kindled anew. Right? And this virtue always brings us into the relationship with God, because He is the fountain. He's the fountain. He's the one that always gives. And so when we pursue after virtue, we pursue after Him. The son, older son, was serving, but it was in order to get. The father saw you're serving, but it's keeping you here in the house together, right? It's keeping us in relationship together. So back to cleaning out the closet. Okay? Gonna bring an end to this story. I don't like doing it. Right? I don't like doing it, but I was challenged in the way that I approached it. Because I realized that if I would open myself up to the responsibility, okay, of needing to do this, because it is just part of what it is to be a parent, then I can leverage the opportunity to build a relationship, because something special actually happens. So several seasons after my first initial revolt, we started to do it. I don't necessarily like it, but I've learned to appreciate elements of it. Because in the taking out of the clothes and in having to try them on your kids, all right, and they hate the shirt comes on, the shirt comes out, the shirt comes, it's such a painful process. But when you put a certain shirt on, right, what happens is that it jogs your memory. Remember this shirt when we used to wear it all the time on vacation, right? It started to remind me of precious moments in the lives of our kids. It reminded me, right, of certain events, certain vacations. Remember when we got this from here? Remember when Tita and Giddo, they went on vacation, they got you the shirt and we never wore it, right? We're just going to ship it off, right? It reminds you of moments. It brings you back to what is important. If I solely saw it as just a responsibility and I did it, I would bite down and grit and bear it, right? But I was challenged to say, okay, let me try and enjoy the process a little bit, right? Enjoy it a little bit. And it opened me up to remembering, why does the shirt even exist? Because of the relationship that it nourishes. And if we were to look at certain things in our lives, okay, that we look at as a chore, that we know it's good to do, but we look at it as a chore, and challenge ourselves to change the paradigm in which we see it, we will gain something beautiful from it. And if we do it right, the chore or whatever it is that we're doing should help us cultivate a relationship, either with somebody that is significant in our lives, or while doing a chore, it'll help us cultivate a relationship with the Lord. The relationship is the end goal. And we can't forget that. The older son forgot it, and it led to resentment, which stole away the joy of having his brother back, somebody that he can have a relationship with as well. When we forget why we do the things that we do, and we forget the relationships, that get us into certain situations, that little fish of resentment swims along with us, and it eats away joy. But let's focus on the relationships when we do the different things around us, and realize that we do them in order to cultivate relationship. But sometimes we have to change the paradigm in which we do them, and say that they're there so that I can build a relationship, not that they're there so that I can get something out of it. Right? That's what the older son done, and he lost the joy of being in the father's home. But the father came and said, You are with me. You are with me. And now our younger son, he's with us too. That's what we celebrate. That's what we celebrate. So I want you to think of something in our minute of silence that challenges you to look at something you've been doing and say, okay, Lord, I've been harboring up some resentment about doing something, right? Whatever it is for you. I've been harboring up resentment. Help me fix the paradigm in which I'm doing it so that I can see the relationship and cultivate a relationship out of what it is I'm doing. Right? Ask him to open up your eyes to say, okay, how do I change the paradigm in which I'm doing, this service in my life so that it doesn't steal my joy? And glory be to God forever.